This episode of Nintendo Expansion Pass is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support Nintendo Pop Like and the Boss Rush Network, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Boss Network and see which tier is right for you. Thanks for your continued support. Hello everybody, welcome to Nintendo Expansion Pass here on Watch Push Games. I'm your host and Latte Excited Eddie V, back with another solo episode. Got a really good one for you guys, and I kind of do want to hear what you guys think. So you probably, of course, read the title of the episode, but I really would love to know, can Nintendo produce genre-defining games still? And what I mean by that is, can they still produce titles that just would change the genre, change the perception of the genre, and elevate it to a new expectation of execution when people are playing a game? I really found this amazing idea from Xbox Expansion Pass with Luke Lore and Captain Logan, and they were talking about Xbox's genre gaming and genre defining games and a pillar of gaming. Some of their top known games, related games that are just kind of describes Xbox in general and help push that platform. And I when I heard the discussion, I was so fascinated what they was talking about. And I kind of messaged them that, with a great episode that they put out, that I said, you know what, I kind of want to take that discussion and apply it to Nintendo, because I think it's a different answer when it comes to Nintendo compared to Xbox and Sony. So we're gonna get right into it, but we gotta understand, what does genre defining actually means. And it's really kind of hard to describe it, but I found on this post at hennative.com, and this user Abby underscore Varn um answered this question that another person put. They were just like, what does genre defining mean? And Abby said, it's kind of hard to explain, but genre defining means when a game or art is so good it defines its own genre, or it has the characteristics that people then compare the following releases to become releases to, because the previous work is the perfect example of the genre. So pretty much, a game is so highly highly accepted, and every time a game comes out, they're always connecting it to another game, because the game that they connected to or compared it to is like the pinnacle of that genre. When uh we speak of Metroidvanias, the first one we think of is Super Metroid, because Super Metroid, which is Metroid 3, really took the exploration and adventure aspect to a very high level. And when people are designing that style of game, they use Super Metroid as the template, or you can definitely see the similarities and executions and ideas that came from Super Metroid. Now, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is part of the Vania, because they took the Super Metroid idea, the foundation, and added their own spin with RPG elements, um, different abilities, magic, melee combat, and things like that. And it wasn't so much like puzzle based in a sense. It was, this exploration and, and timing and secrets. And of course, Super Metroid had those breakaway walls and, going to different zones. Castlevania Symphony of the Night had those things also, but added more to it to differentiate it, different itself and separate itself from Metroid. And on uh not Retrovaniacs, um Jeremy Parrish made turned the coin on Retronauts, that podcast. He turned the coin in Metroidvania because of those two games being put together, and you seeing now uh how those games, Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, are genre defining games. They changed the adventure exploration, and you can see those elements even in regular adventure games. If you look at Tomb Raider and well, not so much Uncharted, but Tomb Raider, you know, you get not powers, abilities throughout um throughout the adventure, but you could transport yourself to other places and get a different ability by solving that puzzle. Getting that Tomb Raider effect that was from back of the original game, but the reboot just does more with it. So I heard that, when Luke and Logan were talking about it, I just found that very fascinating, and I kind of had to think, can they still produce it? And in a way, yes, they actually have produced it. Um, and if you think about it, Fire Emblem Awakening was kind of a big thing, but Fire Emblem Three Houses, that's a genre defining game because the relationships that you have with the game, the execution of which class that you would go with, and people just, when you look at Fire Emblem Engage and other Fire Emblem titles, they all going to compare it to this sim strategy based game. Of course, we have like Final Fantasy Tactics and this Gaia, but those are different kind of strategy games that we have known and played. But like when for Nintendo, Fire Emblem, which was a series that started as a very niche game, um it became big when Fire Emblem Awakening came out. Now that, when we look at Fire Emblem games, we're all going to compare it to Three Houses because of what it did. It took it to a new level, and Kobe Tecmo, along with intelligent systems, worked together to bring it to this level. And if you think of games like Wargroove or any other kind of yin yang, even like Project Triangle, or Triangle Strategy, I should say. If you think about games like that, Fire Emblem, comes into the discussion, and that's mostly Three Houses. We still look at, you know, when we look at the Legend of Zelda, that had monumental genre defining moments. Ocarina of Time, um, uh, Breath of the Wild. Once again, my phone going off. Like we had all of these things that changed. Now, I mentioned Ocarina of Time because the Z targeting was a big thing that lock on how to play a venture game or most games in the 3D space. Super Mario 64 is a big one because, and that's genre defining because of the analog stick that the N64 had, and just moving freely in that 3D space compared to the way that people move on a PlayStation 1 game. It set a precedent of future 3D Mario games and platforming games in general in 3D. Look at Jack and Daxter, look at Ratchet and Clank, Sunset Overdrive, like the platforming kind of games of those years. Of their time, I should say, when they came out, kind of all came from like Super Mario 64 in a sense. So it's really interesting to see, Nintendo producing a lot of genre defining titles. Now, and the reason why I kind of feel like they still can it's because not just out of the sale numbers or anything like that. I really believe that if if you think about the games that Nintendo has produced throughout the years through a lot of their well-known series, they each change things up for it. And then there are games that just like so much stick with a with these gamers, with reviewers and journalists, and you see the titles pop up in certain reviews. Um, if we take a look at Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, uh, which is by the time you guys see this is released, you could see comedic writing in a game. And a lot of it really, we had comedy writing definitely from adventure games, the point of click, uh the point and click games on PC. But like for console and for Nintendo, you was busting out laughing with Paper Mario A Thousand Year Door because of the writing. And it really showcased how you could do comedy right in a game. And there's just there's always just showcase that when you have a game with great writing and great dialogue, your game really will uh kind of be something that's going to be held in high regard. A Bug's Tale that came out, people keep saying, people who picked that up say that Paper Mario aesthetic, because definitely with the graphics and everything, and a little bit of the writing. But like Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, or even just Paper Mario in general, is that genre defining kind of series because of the graphics that they put out, the writing, the way they change things up, the way you meet characters with it. And so it's very interesting to see how Nintendo still able to produce games that just like really make you look at a genre and be like, how did you guys do this? How did you change it? When Breath of the Wild came out, other open world games that were coming out were getting compared to Breath of the Wild. Genshin Impact is one that got compared to Breath of the Wild. We know how all of that goes and stuff. When we think of freedom in open world, we'll think of Breath of the Wild because of not only you plan your destination to go anywhere, and it doesn't hold your hand, but there's a lot of planning and a lot of science in that planning to get there. It's that big cause and effect with it. Now, if I think about genre defining on Xbox and PlayStation, it's really kind of hard to say which games there are, and I don't want to seem like I'm being disrespectful or I don't know anything, but in a sense, definitely Halo was a genre defining game for Xbox and first person shooters in for consoles. Not only because of its online features and stuff, but look at the way that it was a game that had to didn't really have to deal with health packs because you had a shield that will respond. Having more than just a split screen on it, everybody having their own Xbox and going online, or even doing like LAN parties. It was very interesting to see on how that happened. Now, if you think of it about Nintendo, um you had Golden Eye 007, 007, Golden Eye for GameCube. You had Mario Kart Double Dash. Even though that was split screen, everybody was playing uh on that GameCube and using their own controller. If we think about functionality, Wavebird, even though that's not a game, Nintendo putting out the Wavebird kind of hinted out on how wireless controls nowadays kind of comes from the GameCube and the Wavebird. But it's just like games from Nintendo, their first party games, and I know that is a little that's definitely hyping it up. And speaking about them, they just have a lot because of the things that they try. Now, surprisingly, Wind Waker, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, isn't a genre defining game. And the reason why I say that is because with the way that it's styled, the cell shading, you got to give it up to Jet Set Radio on the Dreamcast. Sega did that first. So it became, that game as the foundation is a genre defining game because you never seen graphics like that. You never seen an art style be produced on the Dreamcast and done in a way that you've seen it. So really, Wind Waker, as great as it is, it's not a genre defining game. It's got to kind of be something that you know, surpasses expectations. Now, I will say that, when Wind Waker was first shown, it got a lot of hate. But now that we see other games use that cell shading graphics or that style, Wind Waker always come up and not Jet Set Radio. As weird as it seems, it should be Jet Set Radio being used. But Wind Waker pretty much, I think, with its cell shading art style and its movements and it really looking like a cartoon, you would be surprised on how many games that use shading and our action adventure games get compared to The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Heck, we still talking about it here on Boss Rush on how we how we love Wind Waker and we want to port it on Switch or whenever it comes out and everything. Like it really is amazing that Nintendo has that power of design with their IP and their recognizable IP. Now, I when I talk about action, racing games and stuff like that, we got games like Takedown from Burnout 3. I mentioned Forza Horizon 4. We got Skate 3. We got all of that, but at a time when we really was thinking about racers and everything, virtual racing was a big thing. Outrun was a big thing. Like Sega had the racing games on lock just for that genre. But if we look at any big racing game, still to this day, whether it's arcade or real, it's going to be Mario Kart from the Super Nintendo. Mario Kart is such a genre defining game that there start to be other games that came out like that on future platforms. Um, that was even Diddy Kong Racing owes a lot to Mario Kart Racing because it was how do you take these characters that's loved and well known in the Mario universe and give them a game where they race each other. When we think of racing games, we really were thinking of stuff like I mentioned earlier, like outrun and pretty much like a sight bike and stuff like that, where you were going on the track, but you was continuously going on the track and you was going to different cities. It was always about making sure that you hit that checkpoint to add more time. And Super Mario Kart, it really was about 3 laps, get in first place, grab coins in order to defend yourself, and stop other players from trying to get the number one. You use power ups, so it had this arcadey feel to it. It had this different style of gameplay, and as time went on, you just see other games. Crash Bandicoot had it. Like I think Spiral had like a racing game, like I mentioned earlier, Diddy Kong, and then you just had like other third party. Blur was one. It tried to make fun of Mario Kart, and we kind of seen how that turned out and stuff. But it was just trying to borrow elements from Mario Kart, and you're able to see the difference in driving games of what is realistic. Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport are like now the well-known realistic games where when we think of arcade driving driving games, we think of Mario Kart. We don't really think so much as for Need for Speed or even Burnout in other games like that. Even with Codemasters titles and stuff, we don't think about that when it comes to uh driving games just in general altogether. It really is um Super Mario Kart or just Mario Kart nowadays. When we think of fighting games, Street Fighter 2 was the genre defining game. Mortal Kombat came in and took over. Um and then Mortal Kombat 2 refined it and took it to another place. But then Killer Instinct came and took it over. And that was with Rare, Midway, and Nintendo together. And because Killer Instinct really changed fighting games literally in general because of the fast combos and continuously being able to do it, at a higher frame rate and do it so smoothly using those characters. To the point where Mortal Kombat 3 started using it. Tekken and Soul Calibur started using fighting games of today like Blaze Blue uses it. Fatal Fury and the Neo Geo fighting games uses it. Like combos in fighting games were a really big thing, and continuously was a really big thing with Killer Instinct. And when it kind of, and now I want to give props to Street Fighter Alpha and Super Street Fighter, is because when they added that super bar to do a super move, it added a little bit more to the fighting genre where games were using it and still use it to this very day, building up a meter and releasing it on your opponents. So it but like when we just think of combos and fighting games, it really was Killer Instinct being that genre defining game. So I'm just excited to see that Nintendo can still put out games. Now, Killer Instinct is a Microsoft title because they did buy Rare and Rare owns the IP. So when their new release came out, when Xbox One came out, it still had that pizzazz. It still reminded you of, you know, um, of the combo system. But then you get Super Smash Brothers on N64 and how that changed arena based fighting. Of course we had Power Stones. We got the multiverse now. Like we got that Melee combat party system where getting to 100 or getting to a high point damage to hit them and ring them out, that really it's Smash in every sense. Now the debate is Smash a fighting game? And it's kind of hard to say if it is a fighting game because yes, you do got combos, you do got special moves, you do end up using certain power ups. There is a point where you could get a power up to smash your character out with a special move with it. And when Super Smash Bros. Ultimate came out, they gave you a meter that you could build up so that you were able to do a super move, but it wasn't as powerful with it. So, any kind of melee arena based fighting games kind of came from Smash. In reality, when we started seeing like two fighters on screen, uh one of the big hosts was kind of like Ken and Ryu versus Bison. Like we always wanted that, but it came to Capcom versus Marvel, or Marvel versus Capcom, how big those games were, and they're genre defining because they were able to allow still that combo connection, but then add other characters that you use in order to fight. Like that is a genre defining game as much as that is a Nintendo. And the reason why now I'm speaking about other games because there's just been more titles in their own right that's been genre defining outside of Nintendo, that is still used today. The Resident Evil 4 helped the Gears of War series. The Gears of War series became a genre defining because of that third person over the shoulder action and being able to move and shoot and and team up with other people online. And it's just like it's in its own world where there are other games that use that play style for it. So it really is amazing. And of course there definitely is more. And I do want to recognize Sony for some of their games, because like when we think of military games, SOCOM was a big factor, definitely for PS2. SOCOM was a big factor when it came to like actual military games. And yes, everybody could say Call of Duty and Medal of Honor and things like that, but SOCOM did something that no one was doing and everything. It's like you had these big squads working together to defeat your opponent and doing it online. And like it's amazing to see how, as recognizable as that series was, that it's not around anymore. And now if we think about like maybe a game that has horror, a game that that hides the action that you are involved in, that is bringing you emotions, that of course The Last of Us is like is a game that is kind of genre defining on its own, because it's able to mix all of these elements to tell a darker yet mature story that leaves you putting the controller down and coming away from it with the cinematic expression and feel to be like, I just experienced a game that dealt with all of these themes and issues, and that was very memorable. And there hasn't been a lot of games like it. Of course, The Last of Us Part 2 um really took it and I should say, yeah, kind of just like added more to it, but still gave you enough, like with the backstories of Ellie and like going through that times with Joel, and who she is as a character now and how the game ends. It's just like you still don't get that kind of richness. Um and there's been other games that do still tell darker stories, very mature and everything, but the richness is it's just so gravitating. Like, it's just so amazing to see that you get something out of it, and it really is just super impressive. um Once again, my phone. Uh, but I think just for Nintendo themselves, just for this conversation, I really am happy that they still can produce titles that are genre defining. Of course, I would say Mario Kart 8 and everything, but like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a genre defining game, because you got seven characters, and the way that you do is combats and is combos, and just adding like different different mechanics that you just don't see in games. And people could say other places stuff, and which is true, yes. But like it really is amazing on how some of these niche games that Nintendo have become genre defining when people recognize it for what it is and stuff. And yes, I didn't speak about Punch Out and Arms and things like that, because I kind of wanted to focus on if they still have, if they, that power, those developers, those teams that still can produce it. And with Switch successors coming up, we may see more genre defining games. So I'm super excited for their future. But for this question, can Nintendo produce genre defining games still? Yes, they still can. And I want to say this before I head out. I think games on PC, games on Xbox, games on PlayStation, regardless of its first party, of its indie, of its third party, second party, exclusives, whatever. There's always something about um certain games that come out that will be considered as genre defining. There's so much out there to play, and even if you're not able to get any comparisons, or that particular game is genre defining for you as a consumer or a player, it's great that we got so much variety that's out here now to give it that title. For me though, with Nintendo, they just still have so much in producing, so um, and still just producing. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for Nintendo Expansion Pass. I really do want to know from you guys, what is what is genre defining, definitive or anything for you? Like, what games you think change a genre and gets compared? Now, of course, we got Chrono Trigger with New Game Plus, and how that just changed genres everywhere because that functionality is in so many games. Look at Stellar Blade. The update came out that allowed New Game Plus to get it after its action. And of course, the Demon Souls and Dark Souls games and stuff will probably be considered as genre defining too. But I would definitely love to know what you guys think. Go ahead, post it in the comments if you're watching the video. You can let us know on our Twitter page at Power Block Podcast, or come on our Boss Rush Discord and talk to us about it, of what makes something genre defining, and do you think that Nintendo still could produce it? With that, everybody, have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on Nintendo Expansion Pass. Bye, everybody.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.